Yeah, and I think the other thing, so now we can talk about this a little bit too, but this idea of how do you maintain intimacy in a community environment in the context of having thousands of consumers. And I think there's been some learnings along those lines as well.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things we learned was that, again, if you're now part of a community of, let's say 5,000 people, well, it's really not a very close community, right? So how do you make these people feel like they are part of a more intimate community while still being able to get these large numbers? And the solution here was to create these sub-communities within the community. For us, it's actually different colored rooms. And whenever you as a panel member or community member logs in, you're going to be entered in this colored room. You're always in the magenta room, for example. So you know all of the people that are in the magenta room, and they're always going to be the same people you interact with. But from our perspective, as a corporation, we're talking to thousands of people. You're not seeing it as a member, as a community member, but that's what we are getting. So that was certainly something that we learned over time, that we were losing that sense of intimacy by going so large. Certainly. The other thing that we learned was very interesting, and again, it's just another example of improvements that you make over time. But we realized that by having all these different groups, it took a tremendous amount of effort to monitor what was going on in all of these different sub-communities within the community, right? And we didn't have resources to be monitoring all of that. So we did a few things. First of all, there's which is a common thing, but you have a self-reporting system where if somebody in the community feels that there's something offensive or that shouldn't be part of the community, they actually report to you. So there's some self-policing in there. But another very interesting thing that we've done is this idea of a host buddy, where we get people who are active in these communities, not necessarily people who have very strong opinions, but they're certainly active in these communities, and they become the hosts. And we kind of give them the job of being the host within that community and somewhat moderating. And it's something that we first tried in a project that we were working on with MIT, and it worked really well, and it's working well for us now too. So it's this idea again of continuous improvement, and in the spirit of what we're talking about here, making sure that you find a partner that is willing to keep working with you on these improvements.
Yeah, and in the few minutes we have left, I guess what I'd like to do is just kind of ask, kind of along those lines, what would you say the key lessons learned from your experience in collaborative innovation, and what would you give as advice to companies that are in a similar situation?
I think something that I have already mentioned is this idea that don't wait to get started with something that's going to be absolutely perfect, because there's nothing, there's no such a thing, right? You're going to keep evolving, and you're going to keep learning and developing it. So that would be one of the key things for us as key learnings. We just, as soon as we had something that we thought we could launch, we just launched it, and kept learning from there. And I think that the other very important thing when you're trying to innovate and you're trying to create something that doesn't necessarily exist yet is the idea of that you're going to get resistance internally. If your company is anything like mine, you are going to get resistance, and you should be prepared to go through a process of educating people and selling your ideas. And a lot of that is by showing them the value that the tool has versus what they would expect out of it.
So, Bill, how about you? What would you say is some of the key lessons learned in that?
Yeah, I think one key lesson is education is critical. I think it's a helpful thing to start with a small win and build some momentum. I think Kelly Styring was talking earlier about her experience, and that 50% of the time was spent doing the research and 50% of the time was spent marketing it. And there's probably a lesson to learn there, especially when you're doing something that's brand new to the company. I think you can expect to spend a large amount of your energy, especially with that first small win, calming nerves. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We're not going to be able to get you an answer if we don't try this, And we need you to kind of walk along the process a little bit with us. Another thing that was very helpful, I think finding a trusted partner to do it with is critical. And for us, one thing that helped make it attractive to us and helped me sell it internally is that it was co-funded. We put up part of the funding for it, and Gongos put up part of the funding for it. So I could go to my management team and say, hey, I need some money to do some R&D. It is highly risky. Don't know if it's going to work. Neither do they. But they've got skin in the game, and we've got skin in the game. And can we try something small? And you do that something small, and you get a win, and you figure out what worked and what didn't work, and you iterate on that, and you build little momentum, and all of a sudden you've got something where people are asking for it. Hey, can we go do another test like that last one we did? We did several iterations where somebody would say, hey, can it go do this? We had focused very much on SKU level testing, and somebody said, can we do a merchandising test with it? Can we, try a couple of different product layouts? And we said, I don't know, it seems like you should be able to. And we called and said, can we do that? And you guys said, I don't know, it seems like we should be able to. So we kind of tried it, and we put it out there. And some of the things that we did worked. Some of the things that we did didn't work as well. And you have to exploit those things internally that work. And you have to address the things that didn't work and be honest about them with your organization and say, because if all you do is talk about the things that worked, then they're going to think you're trying to sell them. If you talk about the things that worked and you talk about the things that you're addressing and changing, then they believe that you're innovating. And then one kind of intangible thing is in an environment where innovation is stressed, and we talk a lot about innovation for our consumers, it is a very huge boost to morale for my team that has been working on this to be able to say, to look at my team and say, you guys are doing innovation. It's not just our creative and our marketing folks that are doing innovation. You all are doing innovation. And when we get one of our corporate officers took a look at what we were doing, and he said, that is innovation. And when you get some love from your senior management team on what you're working on, that is a huge boost to morale. So and you can't undersell that just as a benefit in itself.
As researchers, we normally don't get that.
We don't get a lot of love from we don't.
And I think one of the other things I would kind of share from our perspective is, in an organization that does research, you tend to have established ways of doing every different type of project. But in innovation, you have to accept the fact that it's going to be 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. There is going to be inherent, failure in the process, and that's part of the challenge of creating something that doesn't exist. You've got to accept that, and I think that's been an important learning for our organization too. I guess with just a couple minutes left, I'd like to just ask kind of an old script moderator question, which is, what's the one thing you would like people to walk away from our session thinking about or to carry with them as they leave with regard to the subject of collaborative innovation? And Sibyl?
Yeah, I think I would say just don't be afraid to try something new, and make sure that if you want to do this with a partner, that you'll find the right partner, somebody who understands how you work, and so find that right fit. This tool has been tremendous to us. I am responsible for research on the product development side of things, and we've been able to get quick answers to questions that the teams had that we probably would not have done any research on before, just because it didn't warrant us to go out and do a study just dedicated to answer that particular question. So by not being afraid of innovating and creating this new platform, I think we've gotten to a place where we're much better off with the tool than we would be without it.
Okay, Dylan, one quick takeaway from your standpoint.
Yeah, I can't do one, sorry. So I think the trusted partner thing is important, and I think it's absolutely critical. I don't think somebody could have walked off the street and sold me on this idea. That said, I think aside from that, I would kind of try and instill the idea that iterating is important. And if you don't take that first step, you don't have to have the home run with the first step. You just have to have, you got to do something to get that small win and start building some momentum. But you can't be afraid to take that first step. If you don't step out of your comfort zone, then you're going to be doomed to do things the old way for the rest of your career.
Yeah, and my last thing would be Steve Jobs from Apple said once, the key to innovation is saying no 100 times. The one thing you should say yes to. And that's kind of our philosophy. I think it's important for companies to think about. Just because someone comes to you with an idea, it doesn't mean it's necessarily a good idea for you or for your clients or for what you're trying to achieve. And I think that's been an important guiding philosophy for us too. So thank you both for spending the time.